What is up? It's another SHW Offroad Daily Drop. If you're new here, the Daily Drop is a daily drop of knowledge hosted by yours truly, Jake Tillman from SHW Offroad. SHW Offroad is the leading vehicle storage solution manufacturer in the USA. That's what we do. Drawer systems, tailgate storage units, seat deletes, all that stuff. And we're doing more every year. So stay tuned, shwoffroad.com. But we're not here for SHW Offroad today. We are going to talk about off-road trailers and off-road campers. As I mentioned in my last video, there are hundreds and hundreds of hours of content about this, forum posts, Facebook groups, manufacturer provided content about trailers. We are going to talk about, I don't know if I've ever seen a video of this conversation had before. If it's out there, then great, but I'm going to bring our opinion to the table here. We're going to compare two kinds of off-road trailers, if you will. So we've got the off-road trailer with a rooftop tent, right? So there's no sleeping quarters in the base of the trailer. You've got a trailer, then usually a rack of some sort, and then a rooftop tent. Sometimes the rooftop tent is directly on the trailer. Inside the trailer, you have storage or some other systems stuff. So that's kind of one camp. It's really popular. You can buy these pre-made from manufacturers, or you can repurpose old military trailers as a really common way to go with different size military trailers. But then there's campers. And there are so many different campers out there built for off-road use. That's a different topic, talking about off-road versus maybe consumer grade, I would call it, campers. And we're going to bring someone on to maybe talk about the differences and how you can differentiate and why one might work better than another in certain scenarios. But we're going to stay pretty granular here and try to stay in a vein. I think I'm going to pick maybe just teardrops as off-road teardrops as our case study today. But I can show you this jump, as I so love to do. We can jump on Google and take a look at some of the different campers out there. And like I said, there are a ton manufactured all over the place. But when I'm talking about an off-road camper, I'm usually thinking hard sides. I'm thinking of sleeping quarters integrated in, and kind of a self-contained unit, all in one kind of thing. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about off-road campers. And this in particular, I would consider an off-road teardrop or square drop. And these are different than some of the others out there. Like there's a manufacturer called Conqueror. I forget where they make them from, but the Conqueror has like fold out, soft-sided, sleeping quarters and stuff. Mantis is another popular one, and they do pop tops with canvas, right? So there's some setup involved. And as you can see, there are just so many different kinds of these. So that's what we're juxtaposing or comparing to a typical rooftop tent plus, an open trailer, which to show you what that looks like, you can check this out here. Right here. So this is an M416 style trailer. It's got a rack, and then you've got a tent up top. So that's what we're comparing, those two things. We got this, and we've got this. Okay, these two things. I'm going to start with this because I own these. I own one of these, not one of these particularly, but a trailer with a rooftop tent. And we love it. We've had it for a couple of years now. It served us really well. And I want to run down some of the things I love about a setup like that. And again, this is a kind of an open, it can be an open or an enclosed trailer, but it's a trailer that the sleeping platforms are pretty much all in the rooftop tent up top. So pros of a setup like this: versatility. you can build these however you want, right? This is kind of stripped down, the one we're looking at right now, but if you start diving into some of these builds, they can get pretty wild. You can bolt on or weld on whatever you want on these trailers. So if you look at some of these, you've got propane mounts, you've got gas can mounts, you got bumpers, you have hitches, you have recovery points, you have tons of suspension options. Some people will put a battery electronic system up here. Some people will integrate it in the tub. This M416 has an aluminum cover, right? So you've got all these components that you can add to suit your need, which is pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. It's like you can cater it or build it custom to what you need. So there's a lot of versatility there. The second big advantage to a trailer setup like this is storage. If you're someone that carries a lot of loose gear and you just don't have room for it in the SUV, you will have more storage in a trailer like this compared to a trailer like this. Okay, way more storage in a trailer like this compared to a teardrop or a square drop, because you've got these sleeping quarters that take up a ton of this space. You've got cabinetry and stuff, and you don't have a ton of room for a bunch of loose or bulky gear. So that's another big pro to an open trailer like this, which kind of leads into my third point, in that you can have dual purpose use out of an open trailer like this, right? So you can take this trailer to landscaping supply and have some gravel dumped into it, or you can go get stuff from Home Depot. You can't really do that with an off-road camper as much. Now, the more things you try to have one particular thing do, right? The more flexible or nimble you try to make it, usually just starts getting, bad at all those different things. So I rarely use my trailer for material hauling and stuff. It can be hard to work around the rooftop tent and some of the other stuff I have in the trailer. So that's not a big one, but some people, that's what they use their trailer for. I would encourage you not to make that, the center point of your buying decision though, because you're probably not going to use it like that very much. And if you do, you might not be as happy with the versatility as you might expect. Okay. Lastly, maybe most importantly for some of you, is weight. My trailer, it's all steel all around. It's heavy. It's got a heavy rooftop tent and rack and battery and power. My trailer maybe weighs 1,000 pounds, which could be pulled by almost anything. A cross truck could pull my trailer. My two-door Jeep tows it fine. So does our Grand Cherokee, right? So they're really light. They can be really, 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 really light. Even these little square drops or teardrops, they can come in light too, somewhere around 1,200 pounds. But usually, some of these other trailers are 3,000. Like a Mantis, I think is 3,000 pounds. Wes Harville, our owner of SHW Offroad, he built his own square drop. We might be able to find it now. Let's see. Yeah, so he built his own. And I think he says, I don't know if he's ever scaled it, but somewhere around 2,000 pounds, right? And that can be limiting to some people. You're not going to pull a trailer like this probably with a cross trek, or an Outback. Some of these smaller SUVs or smaller crossovers. So open trailers can be pulled by almost anything, any vehicle. So those are some of the pros of a trailer with an RTT setup. There are a lot of pros to a camper. And the progression usually goes, a lot of people that start with one of these open trailers move to a camper. And I'm going to lay out why. It's not going to be true for everyone, but for a lot of people, I think some of these pros that I'm going to talk about, they're going to apply. So camper pros, number one, setup. To set up this camper, this teardrop, really, there is no setup time. right? You've got to level it, but you got to do the same with an off-road trailer with a rooftop tent. If you store, some people have to store gear in here, right? They have to fold the bed back and then they'll put gear where the bed was. Some people have to remove that gear to get to their sleeping quarters if that's how they have it set up, but a lot of people don't, right? So their bed is already made. They literally stop, open the door after leveling the trailer, and go to bed, which is killer, especially if you're on the move a lot. This doesn't apply to every kind of off-road camper though. Like I said, there are some campers that require a setup. There's Conquerors, you got to fold out the bed quarters, the bigger ones anyway. You got some with pop tops, so setting up one of these campers, and leveling jacks and all that stuff, some of the bigger ones, some of these other ones outside the scope of what I am talking about today with like teardrops, their setup can take as long, if not longer, than a rooftop tent. Patriot campers, they got to be folded out. The Opus campers or Opus trailers, they do some fold out ones, but they take time to set up. Some of them take minimal effort, right? The air one, you turn on the compressor, and I think it just kind of does its thing, which is cool. But most of these like teardrop campers, they take no setup, which is awesome. Everything's ready to go. That's one of the biggest reasons that my wife and I are considering upgrading ours. Number two, perhaps even more important or bigger, hard sides. Hard sides on a camper can really bring out a ton of functionality in the camper. So it's way easier to climate control a camper with hard sides, right? So you open up the possibility to do not only heat but also AC in these units. You're less susceptible to temperature changes if you build it right, insulate it right, or buy one that's insulated right. You can sleep a lot easier in windy conditions or rain, right? So you've got all these environmental advantages to having hard sides around your sleeping quarters. You also need to consider bear country. If you're not staying in, I believe, I don't know all the legislation around this or even how hard it is enforced, but there are some parts in Yellowstone or there are some parts around, Glacier National Park that you cannot stay in the park campground with a soft-sided, sleeping quarters. You have to have hard-sided, right? So you've got the law to abide to technically, but also just safety, right? Having hard walls can really put a mind at ease in bear country or anywhere else that might be a hostile environment, whether that's due to nature or other people. So a lot of pros to having hard walls, and really you can only do that with an off-road camper as opposed to a trailer. There are some other things involved. A couple quick pros that are also things to consider are galleys. Most of these campers have integrated galleys that pop up and give you quick access to cooking. You probably saw, or if you watch this channel, you probably saw my video on kitchen setups, and I talked about why it doesn't make sense to always have like a dedicated kitchen galley or nested kitchen setup in an SUV. Well, it does make sense to do it in a camper. You have the room, the design usually can accommodate a galley like this, and it's really functional and useful, especially for quick trips or with a family where you have to stop and make lunch somewhere and you don't want to spend an hour doing it. So galleys are big. And lastly, they're just more comfortable. You usually have more comfortable beds in them. I've mentioned AC, heat, environmental resistance. They're way more comfortable. You usually sleep better. But some of these smaller teardrops or square drops, one of the cons to them is headroom. They're pretty tight. Almost none of them you can stand up in unless you get a bigger trailer with a pop top or something. A lot of them, even just sitting in them, your head is close to the ceiling. So space can be constricting, but they are really comfy. Okay, so those are two, I guess, solutions to problems that people have. They want more more comfortable sleeping quarters when they're off-roading or overlanding, if you will, or they just need more storage, right? So those are some of the pros and cons. You'll have to take those and apply them to how you want to use your vehicle and use your trailer. I'd love to hear more thoughts on this. If you run a camper and you've got some other pros that I didn't cover, or some other cons, let us know. But tomorrow we're going to dive into a completely new topic, a little bit kind of a 180 out of nowhere. We're going to talk about range, vehicle range, and where, why, and how to carry extra fuel. This is very basic, but not a lot of people put much thought into it. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm actually going to tease a couple of days from now, we're going to talk about fluids in general, which is another one. A lot of people carry spare fluids that they probably don't need to carry, and they're not carrying it correctly. And we're going to dive into that in a couple of days. But tomorrow, come back for fuel range. Really, it's just all about vehicle range. It's not centered around carrying extra fuel. It's about making sure you have the proper range in your vehicle. So I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching today. We do this every day. Okay, we do this every single day. Join us, learn, and let us know what we can bring to the table. A lot of this stuff is fueled by and is brought up because you asked for it. So let us know what you want and we'll deliver it. Otherwise, see you next time. SHWOffroad.com. You can find my number there. Call me if you'd like to talk. All right. Bye-bye.